الرحمن الرحيم نحمده ونصلي ونسلم على رسوله الكريم ما بعد. Number 9, another favor he was granted alayhi salatu wassalam is that the miracle of every prophet ceased and came to an end, whilst the miracle of the Master sallallahu alayhi wasallam, of the first and the last, namely the immense Qur'an, will remain until the day of rising. Sheikh Izzuddin ibn Abdul Salam rahmatullahi alayhi points out the fact that the superiority of the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam even over other prophets is indicated and shown to us by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with how each miracle that a prophet was sent with was limited to the time that they were sent for. The miracle of that particular prophet was with the people for the time that that prophet was present amongst them. And the difference between them, alayhimus salatu wassalam, and the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam is that the miracle of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, namely the Holy Qur'an, is one that will remain until the final day. One could consider any of the books of the prophets a miracle of their time. But those miracles were left in terms of their preservation up until the presence of the Prophet. When the Prophet of that time had returned to their Lord, Rabb Azza wa Jal, then the books themselves were no longer divinely preserved by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so we find that though the Bible, the Torah, the Injil, the Dawood, the Zabur, for Dawood alayhi salatu wasalam, we believe were all divine books sent by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But the reality of those divine books is that they were divine and protected by Allah up until the presence of the Prophet of that time. When the Prophet of that time passed and went back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had not undertaken the protection of that particular book. And so the Qur'an is a living miracle. So even to today, that the Jewish community are in search of, it's documented and openly, that they are in search of the Tabut as-Sakina, the preserved, the chest that they believe contains the artifacts of the previous prophets, including, they believe, the staff of Musa alayhi salatu wassalam is in there. And the belief within them is that this staff of Musa will, the promised Messiah that they are anticipating, through this staff of Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, will be able to do miraculous things. The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam's miracle is a living miracle, the Qur'an. And its miraculous nature is, there are so many elements and layers to its miraculous nature. One of those being its easy recitation. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made the Qur'an easy to recite. It's not difficult. Extremely easy for the tongue. And that's why you will find when young children, age 2, 3, when they start speaking, if they are taught the Qur'an, they can become extremely fluent in the recitation of the Qur'an. Extremely fluent. I've come across a child at the age of 4, forget about being extremely fluent in the Holy Qur'an, that before they reached the age of 5, they had memorized the entire Qur'an. That's from the miraculous nature of the Qur'an, that Allah has made it easy to recite. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made it easy to memorize. Extremely easy to memorize, whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala opens the doors of memorization for. And I've come across countless miraculous elements of the Qur'an. A senior colleague of mine who was studying, he finished the memorization of the Holy Qur'an in 4 months. From beginning till end. Beginning till end in 4 months. The entire Qur'an. So he wasn't a Hafiz when he started his studies. He went straight to the Alim class. And after he became an Alim, he decided to become a Hafiz. And in 4 months, he did the whole Qur'an. There's an account of one of the Mashaykh that they were traveling by sea. And on the ship, the month of Ramadan came. But there was no one to lead in Taraweeh. So he would learn the juz in the morning and read the juz to the people in the evening. So like that, in 30 days, he completed the memorization of the Holy Qur'an. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has kept every aspect of this Qur'an miraculous. It's one that if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chooses to, يُذِلُّ بِهِ مَن يَشَاءُ وَيَهْدِي بِهِ مَن يَشَاءُ, that there are people who simply listened to the recitation of the Quran, nothing else. I have a close friend in Canada, and he told me his story of how he came back to the deen. So he was born Muslim, but as he was growing up, there wasn't much deen in his life. And he had become a amateur DJ. So as he was studying, he started making those mixtapes, etc. And he was a DJ. That was what he had thousands of dollars worth of equipment that he used to go around and do gigs with, and that was his profession. He was trying to become a professional DJ. He said, just once listening to an element of the Quran, it was so powerful. Just that recitation and the discussion of it that ensued. It was, I came back home and I took all my equipment and I destroyed it. Just completely. And the entire life was changed. I've mentioned this before. Sheikh Qari Abdul Basit, the very famous reciter of the Holy Qur'an from Egypt, from Misr, known for his beautiful recitation of the Holy Qur'an. So one of the senior ulama of Pakistan, when he came to visit Pakistan, so he went worldwide, he went many, many different places. When he went to visit Pakistan, one of the senior ulama asked him that, you have a relationship with the Quran that others don't, and you get to go and perform its recitation, and through the recitation you get to see different. Tell us something that you've experienced with the Quran that it's different. So he goes, of all the stories that I could say, there's one that really stands out. I was invited in those days to recite in front of a communist delegation from Russia, the communist regime under Gorbachev, or whatever his name was. That's his name, right? Yeah. So under his regime, I was invited to recite some Quran in front of them. So he said, I recited Surah Maryam. And his recitation of Surah Maryam is something else. When he goes into Tartil and he recites that slow recitation, and when he sort of goes through the account of Maryam ala nabiyina alayhi salatu wassalam, the way he recites is something else. So he goes, I closed my eyes and I was reciting, and then when I opened my eyes, there was the whole delegation was communist, meaning they didn't believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They had no concept of belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They were all deniers of God's existence. None of them knew the Arabic language. Not a single one. But he goes, when I opened my eyes, all of them were in tears. The recitation had moved them all to tears. So this is the power of the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has kept immense and miraculous thing in the Holy Quran. And you guys can all testify to it. That sometimes when you're listening to the Quran, it's just different. It's not like anything else that you've heard. The speech, the fact that it's Allah's speech and the Kalam, many people don't understand a word of the translation. Not a single word. Not studied the Arabic language at all. But when it's recited, for some reason a tear, and then the floodgates open up on you. And this is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That this is the power of the Holy Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has left immense barakah. And this is the miraculous miracle of the Prophet ﷺ, that it's still present today in its entirety as it was revealed to the Messenger ﷺ. It's easy to recite, it's extremely easy to memorize. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the miraculous nature of the Holy Qur'an is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala moves people with its recitation, with its understanding, with its study and looking into it and delving into what the Qur'an is saying. So from the points that Sheikh Izzuddin ibn Abdul Salam elucidates upon, that shows and dignifies and sort of signifies that the Messenger ﷺ was given an element of superiority over even all the rest of the prophets, was the fact that this miracle, the living miracle of the Quran, is still present today, and that's for the Prophet ﷺ. But one final thing that brings us to is that how fortunate we are as an ummah that we still have the miracle of a prophet with us. How fortunate are we? That it's not like there are some, I took a group of school kids to a Jewish care home, part of our curriculum, and they were looking at their holy book, and they say we can only open it on certain days, and even only certain people can open it, and even them they have to use a sort of stick to touch it. And I was thinking to myself, Allah has given us the Quran, anybody can touch it. Anybody can access it. You don't have to be hierarchy. You don't have to be a sheikh to read the Quran. You don't have to be someone who has special permission. Anybody, every single ummati, in fact, like I said, we have small young kids, age of 4, age of 3, who know how to recite the Quran and access to the Quran. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has favored us as an ummah, and Allah has given us something like the Quran, the miracle of the Prophet ﷺ, that's still here today. But what's the sad bit is our negligence to the Quran. Allah has given us this miracle, it's still here with us, but how negligent are we to it? To both fronts, to its recitation and to its understanding. Both fronts. That each one has a haqq and a right. There's a haqq and a right of recitation, and there's a right of its implementation through understanding it. We are negligent in both. The Quran is so far from our lives. For many of us, we buy fanciful Qurans in terms of its decoration, but that's all it is. It's a decoration on our bookshelf. It's very, very nicely printed. There's all sorts of colors. There's gold embroidery inside there, but all it's there for is to be up on the shelf. That's all it's there for. To look good on our shelf. The Quran is not meant to be on the shelf. The Quran should be something such that its pages are tattered because we've used it so many times. The color changes. When we're studying Hifz class, if you look at any of us, no, I'm not saying about myself, any of the Hifz students, the color of the pages is completely brown because of its constant usage. The Quran should be used. It's not meant to be a decoration or ornament. Allah grant us all the tawfiq. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us the understanding. Wa akhiru da'wan alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Subhanallah bihamdi, subhanakallahumma bihamdik. Wa nashhadu an la ilaha illa ant nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Jazakumullah khairan.